You're gonna get hair everywhere. I'm not gonna let you on my lap. Okay, you can come up here. Oh my gosh, I'm doing this on my lunch break, so I gotta be really quick. Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel. My name is Jamie, and today we're doing a Dollar Tree book review, the show where I go to my local Dollar Tree, find an interesting book, and tell you if it's worth the dollar. And today we are going over Hench by Natalie Zina Walschots. So every so often I find videos on Book Talk that recommend books that I actually find very interesting, so I will favorite the video and then go through all the videos and add those to my TBR. So I was in Dollar Tree and I found this, and it looked familiar and the concept was familiar, and so I bought it. It was interesting enough. I decided I wanted to see it, and I was going through those favorited TikToks and I found a video that I had saved recommending this book, and I thought that was so cool because you don't often find popular or well-known books at Dollar Tree. So I was like, now I gotta read it. For my regular disclaimer, I'm going to be talking about the entire book. I'm going to be talking about my thoughts, my feelings, some of the spoilers. So if you are interested in this book at all, if it's on your TBR, leave the video now, come back after you've read it. For a kind of not spoilery overview, this is a book about a woman named Anna who works for a villain henchman temp agency. She gets contract work mainly for data analysis, so she works behind the scenes, just making spreadsheets and whatnot. She starts this temp job with a low-level supervillain named Electric Eel. He likes her work enough that he asks her to do some field work, and this is essentially her filling the seat so a press conference looks more important or bigger or something like that. For this press conference, he has kidnapped the mayor's son, so the superheroes come to the mayor's son's rescue and they defeat the supervillains. But in doing so, the main superhero, Super Collider, he's kind of like the Superman of this universe. He throws Anna out of his way to try and get to the mayor's son, and it ends up shattering her femur. So Anna becomes permanently disabled, fired from her job, facing eviction, and is currently bedridden, unable to get new work. While she's recovering, while sitting on her friend June's couch, she starts looking at the research of the cost of superheroes. She makes this blog telling her own story, but also the data that she finds about the damage and costs that superheroes create. And that blog gets really popular, so a lot of other people start talking about their own instances being hurt by a superhero because they were in the wrong place at the wrong time, having their building or house or store destroyed, their car being totaled because of superhero versus villain fights. Stop it. She calls this blog the Injury Report, and it gets popular enough that it catches the eye of Leviathan, the biggest supervillain of the world or something like that. And he offers her a job where she becomes the head of her own department for data analysis, and she uses that job to kind of fuck with superheroes and kind of get her own revenge. Then she delves into villainy, targeting the superhero who hurt her, things like that. An overview of my feelings is that this is a well-written book. It has witty dialogue. It's a very fast, fun read. Anna is a witty, fun, interesting character. It has a lot of action. It's action centered, but it's not super action packed. There are fight scenes, there are exciting moments, but when I say action centered, I mean actions are happening. We don't have a lot of time to sit with the characters or the themes. It is more of a plot book. Ways in which I think this book succeeded, the writing specifically for the body horror elements were really, really well done. And I am a person who likes body horror. I think it's I think it's really interesting. When Anna talks about her recovery from her injury, that was some of the most interesting sections of the book. They were just so well done. I just don't really think that this book got to the thing that it was trying to say. The logistical concepts of superheroes in the real world and the cost of damage and the lives lost due to their actions is such a rich and interesting idea. It has grounds for such a philosophical debate, the good that they're doing outweighing the cost of damage and whatnot. I just don't feel like the book really got into the meat of what it was trying to say. It brought to the table this concept and how it's a little more complex than what a Marvel movie might make you think it is, but then it doesn't actually sit with those ideas. It just points out that heroes are bad for the public and then stops there. I think that this is the great start of a writing career. I would love to see Walschots develop her craft, and I think she will become a great writer, but this book is, as her debut, it is okay. It's a solid 3 stars. It was also a little bit boring, and not in the good way. I understand the idea of like the mundane aspects of life within a supernatural or superhero world, but this was just kind of boring. It really just feels like we've got the little seasonings, but we didn't actually get the meat, and I need to sink my teeth into some meat for this book. You know, that's what I wanted and what I was expecting, and I just got little seasonings, little sprinkle on top of the meat, and I wanted more from that, and I don't know where that metaphor came from. That's such a weird metaphor. I don't know where that came from. So that's my general overview. Like I said, solid 3-star book, and I would love to see the author develop her craft, and I think this is the start of a great writing career. But let's get into my real thoughts. So I'm going to start spoiling things. If you're interested in the concept of this book, please go read it first and then come back to this video. What I just summarized in my initial overview was about half of the book, and the second half starts to just focus in on Super Collider, who is the character who harmed both Anna and Leviathan, her boss. Super Collider and Leviathan are like archetypal nemesis, and Anna just hates Super Collider, and so Leviathan and Anna work together to try and take him down, like fully target him and use all of what they know to emotionally and physically destroy him. He is like the Superman of this world, so he's invincible. Like, you can't really shoot him, you can't really kill him. So the first half of the book is really, really fast paced. It skips over things. It's like this moment in time with this important event happening in Anna's life. A few months later, this moment in time with this important event that happened in Anna's life, things like that. And then the second half of the book, it's not slowed down writing style wise, but it is more about like day to day. It doesn't skip through the timeline as much, and so it felt like it was slower paced. Even though the writing style was still like witty and fast paced reading wise, I don't know if that makes sense, but like it was really, really fast paced. It felt like we were flying through Anna's life, and then all of a sudden it was like dead stop. We were focusing on like this week. This is also where the story gets more dark. Previously, there were like horror elements. There was that body horror section. There's more body horror throughout the book, but there was that body horror section. There's like action scenes that are a bit dark or gruesome. This is when it starts to get like actually kind of dark, and we start to sit and dig into the reasons the characters are against Super Collider and what Super Collider did to them and what he does for the public and things like that. There's some backfill between Super Collider and Leviathan on why they are nemesis, and it's kind of like dark. It's kind of dark, and it really puts into perspective, like, Super Collider has been a bad antagonist, monstrous person throughout the entire book, but like this is the final straw. Like, he is irredeemable to the public. Like, this will destroy him as a character. Even though it digs in a little bit, I feel like it still just scratches the surface of what it's trying to get to. The reality of superheroes is such a complex debate, because the whole point of superheroes is that they're saving the world. So if they're saving the greater good, a couple sacrifices or collateral damage isn't the worst. But this book is supposed to point out that that collateral damage is still human lives. That property damage is still somebody's livelihood. Anna being a temp agent is a really good concept, because she is essentially just a civilian who needed a job, and the Villains League hired her. They paid well. She's not a bad person. She's not fighting against the superheroes. She's not aligning herself with evil at the beginning of this book. She's just a civilian who needed a job, and she was in the wrong place at the wrong time, and her entire life is ruined because of one event with a superhero. Her body is permanently changed because of him. She's also in horrible medical debt. Her relationships with her friends is ruined entirely because of this. That's why Anna starts researching the cost of life of superheroes, and she even talks about how they're more like a natural disaster. That's how she starts categorizing it, is the life years lost with these events with these superheroes. That life cost is Anna's driving force, and it is what forces her to align herself with the supervillains to try and take down the heroes. That is such a rich and interesting debate where you could really get into the morality of it and the philosophy of good versus bad and what is the cost of goodness and things like that. Really, this is just presented as what if good guy actually bad. What I mean by that is if you swapped the words hero and villain in this book, it would be a Marvel movie. It would be the regular good guys are good, bad guys are bad. There is no moral grayness. The heroes that we focus on, we only see them doing bad things. Specifically, Super Collider, he is just a monstrous person. It is implied that he is like the one person that's like bad and he just got really popular as a superhero, but he also represents the system of superheroes because like all of these heroes have this collateral damage. And so like he is so bad, he's irredeemable. There's literally no good that he does, and we do not see why the public would align themselves with this superhero or any of the superheroes. There are several heroes that Anna targets and tries to reveal their secrets or their misdoings. One guy, for instance, he's going off the deep end and Anna wants to record him having a very public and violent meltdown. That is a newsworthy article. Like she talks about the backlash he faced from the public. So why would the public, seeing these kind of repeated instances of superheroes being bad, why would they still align themselves with heroes? We never see the actual good that the heroes do in order for the public or the reader to see their side. I think I touched on this on my Iron Widow video, in that when you are writing from the perspective of the bad guy or the rebellion or the person who is going against society, you need to let us know why the public would ostracize them, why the public would side with the society or with the system. The Hunger Games is a good example of this because even though the society and system is very obviously bad to the reader, you can see why the public still sides with the system, and it's because they're either beaten to do it, they're beaten into submission to do it, or they benefit from the system. And so why would they go against that when they benefit and the cost of the rebellion is them losing their lives or their family losing their lives and things like that. So in Iron Widow and in this book, the system, we only see the perspective of the system as bad. We do not see anybody else's perspective of why the system would be good or why the system would work for the public and why the public just goes along with it. Specifically after we get several instances of the system harming the public, it just felt like we were swapping the words hero and villain, and that these were obviously the villainous system. They were obviously bad for the public. So why are the villains like ostracized? Why is the public not agreeing with the villains at this point, you know? Hell, even for the Avengers movie, it only took like a couple months after the Avengers movie came out that audiences were making jokes about the cost of life and property damage caused by the big fight at the Avengers movie. So of course, as soon as you see a superhero not helping the public, that question is going to pop up. Why are superheroes good for the public? What if superheroes are not actually good for us? We're just told that the public sides with them. We never see a regular person grappling with the reveal that superheroes are bad for the society. On the flip side, the villains are never seen doing bad things. I mean, yes, they are seen doing bad things. They are kidnapping people. The villains do kill some people. They attack the heroes, things like that. But it's never given the same weight as what Super Collider would do, or one of the other heroes if they were to do the same thing. It's always a joke. I don't know if that makes sense. For example, Anna jokes about Leviathan having a machine that melts human flesh, and it's just a joke. Well, although that's like a real thing that he has, you never see him use it, and whatever bad things they do is justified by the narration. Anna never has to grapple with her guilt or her morality. She just knows what she's doing. Whatever, awful thing she's doing has a means to an end, and so therefore it is okay. For example, they plan on hurting Super Collider by getting to his inner circle. So Anna gets one of her coworkers to be hired at the hero PR thing, and she starts a relationship with Super Collider's sidekick, Accelerator. She then manipulates him, and he ends up getting harmed and fully killed. And Noor decides, because she was romantically involved with this guy, she was so affected by this that she resigns from her position with Anna as Anna's employee or whatever. And Anna has a moment with her. It's like, I'm so sorry. I shouldn't have made you do this. And Noor absolves her of that guilt. Noor's like, no, I knew what I was getting into. It's not your fault. This is my fault. So Anna is always justified in what she's doing. She's never made to feel that guilt for her morality switching sides. Of course, this is Anna's perspective. She's afraid of the superheroes and she hates them, so she's just going to see them as more awful than maybe somebody in the public would. This no longer feels like a debate where we're discussing the morality of heroes and the cost of life and the collateral damage that they cause. It just feels like superhero bad. It really feels surface level, like we're scratching at it, but we're not actually getting into it. I mean, this concept has been done before. Megamind does this, where the hero's ideology is that everything can be sacrificed as long as he gets his way, and the villain has to then become the hero and take him down. And that's done a lot better and is more of a morally gray character than Hench does. Fucking My Hero Academia has better hero versus villain ideology than this book. And I don't like My Hero Academia. I don't think it's a well-written story. And so the fact that that has more of a debate about this concept in this book just goes to show that it is not getting to where it wants to go yet. The characters are literally all background characters. They are just there for Anna to bounce her witty dialogue off of. Anna has a character arc, and Quantum Entanglement kind of has a character arc, although it is rushed at the end. No other characters have a character arc, and I believe you do need an arc for it to be a respectable character. If they don't have an arc, then they are just in the background. Also, Anna does not have any significant relationships with any of the characters except June, Quantum Entanglement, and kind of Leviathan, kind of Keller. So the author uses banter as a sort of shorthand for these character interactions. We have characters introduced, and then it flashes forward and they're just bantering with each other, and you can see with that banter and with that specific interaction that there is a relationship and a casualness to them, but we don't get to see those interactions that got there. And I'm going to use Keller as an example. So when Keller is introduced, we've not met him before. Anna is trying to get a tactical task force proposal approved, and she's told that this is only getting approved if she's on the field with them. And she's like, what the fuck? I don't do field work. I'm a data analyst. I do spreadsheets. And they're like, it's Keller's idea. And she goes, fuck. And she, backfills us that Keller is the head of the tactical force, whatnot, and he does not like Anna. But then she goes on the mission, she proves herself, whatnot, and then every time Keller is introduced, we see a little bit more that he is more and more accepting of Anna, but we don't get to see that. We are told by other characters, oh, you're proving yourself to him and that's why he likes you. Oh, he begrudgingly smiled at me or sent me a snarky message or whatever. And then all of a sudden they are just friends and we have that banter and he gives her life advice and whatnot. I would have liked to actually see those interactions and her proving herself over and over to Keller, so that we could actually feel this relationship developing rather than just being told and then seeing them have friendly banter with each other. I also did not care about any of the characters except Anna. There's a scene where she has to let go of all of her employees for their own safety, and she's talking to them and hugging them and saying goodbye, and they're all giving her little tidbits of information and whatnot. And I just did not care. I skipped the entire thing. I was like, I do not care about these characters. I don't understand. This is not a found family. This is not it. We're told that she cares about them, but we don't actually see her caring about them. We don't see any weight in their actual relationships is what I'm getting at. And then we have June. She's introduced to us as Anna's best friend. They've had a history together. They banter. They have the friendly, witty conversations, whatnot. June helps Anna while she's recovering from her initial injury. And Anna talks about how much this relationship with June is important to her. They are best friends, right? And then June stops talking to her about halfway through the story, and she's really never seen again. She's mentioned a couple times. Anna's like, oh, I miss her. I want to talk to her, but I understand for her own safety I can't. And that's it. There's no resolution to that. There's no like Anna finally seeing June again or anything like that. June just stops talking to her, and that is it. And it almost feels like the author got tired of writing the character and just wrote her out of the story. And there are other characters that just kind of feel forgotten. All of the background characters, Nor, Hav, Melinda, all of them, they just kind of feel like they were forgotten about at some point, and they were written in when needed and written out when no longer needed. There were also a few dropped plot threads, and I don't know if these were intended to be actual plot elements or if they were never supposed to be, but they felt like they were. I'll give a few examples. The first example is the stalker ex. Anna, at the very beginning, mentions a few times about having an ex who stalked her, who actually showed up to her place of employment. It's never brought up again. I assumed that this ex was going to be an ongoing problem. Maybe he was going to keep haunting Anna. Maybe he was going to keep showing up to her place of employment, putting her in danger with all of the other superhero versus villain danger that she's in. But no, the stalker ex is never seen again, never actually seen on page either. So like, why talk about it so much? That didn't make sense to me. Anna has to go on these like superhero villain summits. They weren't really explained, but they were like press conferences or whatnot. Anna meets one of the like groups of heroes. They're all aquatic themed, and one of them is like, it's rumored that she's pregnant, and Anna's using her like data analysis and whatnot, and so she decides to get a prosthetic pregnancy belly and pretend that she's like 7 months pregnant, and starts talking to this hero, and she's like, oh hey, I mean, don't you think it's a little bit dangerous to be, you know, pregnant and in the game? I think I'm gonna retire. Are you gonna retire? We like never see that hero again. The group comes in for one other scene, and it's mentioned that that specific hero in the group retired due to her pregnancy. They don't come into the story ever again, really. So like, what was that about? Another press conference summit thing. There's like a rumor that these two heroes are the illegitimate children of their mentor or whatever. So Anna's trying to talk to them, trying to get them to eat food or drink water so they can get DNA samples. One of them is like really sexist and mean to her, and she like shuts him down. And that is it. Those two never come back into the story. They're never like a deus ex machina. They're never like used again as a narrative thing at all. The only thing that really comes of it is the sexist superhero calls her like a stupid auditor bitch or something, and so then her name becomes the Auditor, and that's her villain name now. And is that really the only reason those characters were in the story, were to give her a name? What? Along with that, there were some things that weren't really set up or weren't fully explained. Anna's characterization at the very beginning, she's a bit petty, she's mean, she's witty, and then all of a sudden she's super manipulative. Like, we don't see her be manipulative in the very beginning at all. We only see her being manipulative when it is needed for her character to be manipulative. Put that in contrast with Callum from the Atlas 6, who is a very manipulative character. He is seen as manipulative the entire time as soon as he's introduced. Like, that is a big part of his character. And so it just felt weird where all of a sudden Anna can like manipulate and know how to manipulate all of the people around her. Like, that was not set up as a character element for her before it was needed. At one point, Leviathan's like, hey, do you have powers? And she's like, no, I was screened like we all are when we're kids or whatever, and there were no powers. I didn't have any powers. And he's like, okay, I'm gonna have you do a more of a thorough test, and then that doesn't come back, but except it does, because she gets kidnapped and they try and like they do something, and they have to like try and save her in a surgery, and they're doing brain surgery or whatever, and Leviathan's like, hey, I had to like access your powers. It is never explained to us what the powers are. He just says she has powers, and she talks about how she's like more full, like she feels more powerful. This is also explained to us at the same time that she has biomechanical enhancements put in. So she's got like a new biomechanical eye, and things are in her. So like, what is part of her powers and what is also just the biomechanical enhancements that she has? It's not explained ever. I'm assuming it's some kind of brain pattern recognition, but nothing is actually explained. And it was so frustrating, because she would mention her power, but like I didn't know what her power was. And she would also only mention it along with her biomechanical stuff. And so I'd be like, is this because you could see infrared because of your power, or because of your new prosthetic eye? Like, I don't know. So I had to stop filming, and now it's after work. So if I look a little more tired and frustrated, that's why. With LGBT plus representation becoming more mainstream and more popular, my standards for queer representation have definitely been raised. I feel like when I was a kid, if there was a gay character at all, I was over the moon. I was like, oh my god, it's queer representation, you gotta see it, this is a gay book, oh my gosh. And now I'm like, it needs to actually be good representation. Would I say this book has good queer representation? Well, it definitely has queer characters, but that's just it. Anna is one of the only characters that has an arc that is well written, and everybody else is a background character. And so while they are queer, while they are part of the LGBT plus community, they are not really characters, and therefore they are not really representation. So it doesn't really count, in my opinion. Of course, it's great that we have just background people and PCs and whatnot that are part of the community, just to show that the community is everywhere, and normal people, regular people are part of the LGBT plus community. It does something great, which I personally like a lot more in my representation, which is more of a naturalistic approach to it. The author never sits you down and like holds your hand and points to somebody as like, that's a non-binary character. They use they, them pronouns. Do you know what a non-binary person is? Like, she doesn't do that at all. She just introduces a character and just uses the pronouns, and I like that. Keller wasn't really a character, but he does have like a monologue or a conversation with Anna where he sits her down and talks about the way his relationship ended because of the life choices he made. He just mentions his ex-husband. He's like, my ex-husband and I split up. Before that, he didn't have to sit anybody down and was like, oh yeah, I'm a gay person. Do you know what a gay person is? Like, he didn't have to do that. He was just introduced to us as having an ex-husband. And I like that. I love naturalistic world building, and I love when you introduce naturalistic representation. I really hate when you have to stop the story to kind of explain what bisexuality is, when like we are in a world where if you don't know what it is, you can definitely Google it. If you're a kid who has never heard the word, you can Google it. It's not gonna kill you to not explain what a specific demographic is. Anna as a character is also queer, I guess. So Anna is said to be attracted to multiple genders. I don't want to label it as bisexual or pansexual just because it's not outright said. I'm just going to say bisexual. I know there is differences between bisexual and pansexual, but just for the sake of consistency, I'm only going to refer to her as bisexual. Now, this is not a romance book, and even though she does have feelings for a male character on page, I understand that this is not a book where she's falling in love with someone, so we don't need to really dissect her attraction to other people, but I do want to use this as kind of like a jumping off point for my bisexual rant. So many times authors put a bisexual character in their story, but it feels phoned in. And that is just because there are so many, at least in the mainstream books that I have read, there's so many bisexual characters that are only attracted to men on page. And I do feel a little bit like the pot calling the kettle black because I'm a bisexual woman who has only had significant relationships with men. Like, a bisexual person does not owe you a same-sex relationship just to prove their bisexuality. So that's not what I'm saying, and I'm not trying to say that a bisexual person or a character would have to do that. It just does fall in line with this bigger trend that I'm seeing of people having bisexual characters, but then they only have male love interests, and they only show who is sawing. They only mention attraction in relation to men. Iron Widow does this, and it's one of the reasons I stopped reading. I don't know if I said it in my video, but part of the marketing for Iron Widow is that this is a queer book and that everyone's bisexual. Everyone is bisexual. All of the characters are bisexual. But Zitian has an on-page relationship and feelings for 2 men, and just offhandedly mentions that she's also interested in women. But there's no on-page attraction to any of the women or female characters. At least to the point I got like over halfway through. At least to that point, there was not. I see that so often in books, is that they have a female bisexual character, but on page, she only ever mentions attraction to men and has relationships with men, and then just offhandedly is like, I also like women. Or I have had a relationship with a woman in the past, but I never talk about it. And that's just a trend that I don't like, and I would like to see less of. And I know it's up to me to read more sapphic books that will have that attraction and not have that trend, but like also like we can have that in mainstream books too, please. Anyway, that's my bisexual rant. In regards to this book, I can see it a little bit. It does fall into that where she on page only has romantic interactions or conversations with men. So in regards to Anna, she does have on page romantic interactions with men. She talks about having feelings for men. She goes on a date with a man, although she does, in the same vein, talk about being attracted or finding a woman attractive, and she has confirmed like a relationship with a woman before, but that is the extent. I will give this book a pass because Anna doesn't have that much. Like when I talk about romantic interactions with men, it's like not that much. This isn't a love story, and she is kind of an awkward person who doesn't really feel romantic feelings like that, or at least isn't in a place where she can. It doesn't have as much of the tropes that I'm seeing in other books, but it is part of a bigger trend that I'm seeing. I really don't like it, and I would like less of that, please. But that's the end of my bisexual rant. Now let's get into the quantum problem. So I'm a theater person. I went to college for theater, and I took many classes talking about production and design. And what you learn in these production and design classes is that every element and design choice you make has to have a reason in the story. Let's take Shakespeare, for example. All of his plays, super old. They're like 400 years old, and they're in the public domain. So almost every theater company has done at least one Shakespeare play. Let's take Julius Caesar, for example. Now, there is a reason why some productions and the design elements of those productions of Caesar are better than others. There's a vast difference between Julius Caesar in space and Julius Caesar set in American politics. With Caesar set in like an American political system, you are using the story of Julius Caesar to say something about the American politics. You are also using the design elements of the politics and the setting and system that you've chosen to elevate the story of Caesar. And so whether it's just the setting or the clothing design, it helps connect to real world examples that then help say something about real world examples, versus Julius Caesar in space, which is just slapping a cool setting on top of the story of Julius Caesar. Nothing in space is going to help elevate the story of Caesar. Costume designs are not going to help elevate the characters. It's just going to be something cool that fits the setting. Now, even with a production where the design elements are used to help the story along, they're also influenced by what the designer likes and what is trendy at the time, what's influential, and that's why theater is so great and unique and special and individualized for each production, and that's why I love it. All of those choices around production and design elements are applicable to writing characters. And with that in mind, let's look at the character of Quantum. So Quantum Entanglement is Super Collider's partner, both in her work, her superhero work, and then also romantically. Quantum is both stronger than him, and she has a better superpower than him. She can fly. She is better than him in every way, but she is overshadowed by him. Quantum Entanglement feels controlled by him. She feels beaten down by him. Their relationship is implied to be, if not physically abusive, definitely emotionally abusive. They are really just keeping up appearances for the public, while both of them do no longer actually are romantically involved with each other. Not only does Super Collider himself overshadow Quantum, the entire public forces her to stay there. She doesn't feel like she can break out from his control because the public would not be able to support her. There's also a system called the draft, which gets vaguely introduced towards the middle of the book and then kind of backfill of what it really is in the end of the book. The draft is a system that creates and trains superheroes, and so when you have powers and whatnot, you get drafted into the system, and Quantum Entanglement does not feel like the system, the draft, would support her if she were to break out of the group she has made with Super Collider. The thing is, this is the story of a woman being abused and controlled and overshadowed by a white man abusing the power that the system gave him. Quantum Entanglement is also Maori. If you're not aware, the Maori are the indigenous people of New Zealand. Apparently, Quantum Entanglement moved from New Zealand to whatever North American-ish, I think this is supposed to be Canada, country that she's currently in, to be drafted in and be a superhero and help save people, and she then suffers at the hand of Super Collider. After her entire life is ruined by Anna, because Anna was trying to get to Super Collider, she actually joins up with Anna. Together, they take down Super Collider in a very gruesome way. Actually, it's kind of really gross. But her race is never mentioned as another layer to her story. At first, I didn't think her race or gender was going to be important to her characterization at all. They were just going to play this straightforward as a character, a blank character, overcoming her abuser or the system that supported the abuser. But then it becomes a very rah girl power, good for her moment at the very end when Anna and Quantum team up to defeat Super Collider. It feels very much like that scene in Captain Marvel where she's standing up over and over after being told over and over that she's not going to make it. It definitely has that vibe. It's not exactly like that, but it does have that vibe of go get him, girl, you deserve better. When you're making a comment on her gender and, being pushed down in the system because she's a woman in comparison to a man, why not bring her race into this as well, since she is an indigenous woman? The other thing is she's visibly indigenous. It's not like she's white passing and trying to hide it. She has facial tattoos, which are a tradition in the Maori community. And so, she is very visibly indigenous. Why talk about gender and yet she persisted feel in the story, but then not add her race as another layer on top of that, especially when discussing a systemic power that has made her suffer at the hands of an abusive white man. That would be a great metaphor for the systems within North America that are a white majority that are suppressing the power and happiness of the indigenous communities that continuously make them suffer. Natalie is a white woman. if she did not feel comfortable writing the story of an Indigenous person. I understand like not feeling that was her story to tell or not wanting to tread on anybody's toes and things like that. But at that point, why make her Maori at all? Why give her traditional Indigenous face tattoos at all? It really, really feels like she just thought it was a cool idea and slapped it onto the character. Harkening back to our discussion of production and design elements, you can't just slap something, I mean you can, but you shouldn't just slap something onto a character because it's cool. Those elements have to be used to then elevate the character's story. And this doesn't feel like it was used at all. It really feels like she thought a character with Indigenous face tattoos would be cool, so she wanted to include it. And oh, you get to check off the Native American representation on your box. That's what it feels like. I don't want to say that was Natalie's intention. Obviously, I don't know her, and she probably was doing this with the best intentions, but again, that's what it feels like. If you're going to make an Indigenous character, why not give her the story that you've basically already written and just added that layer onto it and mention her race in this systemic struggle at all? And it just doesn't feel like it was used well. That's what I mean by it, like, this feels like it just scratches the surface. Like, you have a great debate and a great metaphor for systemic power and the struggle that people face and how collateral damage is actually humans and their lives being lost or damaged because of a systemic power, and yet you stop right before you get to the meat of it. You stop right before we actually address the systemic issue. At first it was just Super Collider as the monstrous hero, we just need to bring him down, and at the very end Leviathan's like, no, we have to attack the system. And then it ends. And you're like, okay, but we didn't really get anywhere. We just took down one evil guy. We didn't actually talk about like how the superhero system is bad for the public. I feel like with this discussion of the draft, it really ties into the whole idea of like foreshadowing and how that was not used in this book. Quantum entanglement was not a character before she was needed. She was mentioned, she was there when Anna got hurt, but she was not a character. We didn't know anything about her until Anna started looking into her life as a way to get to Super Collider. Same with Accelerator, which is their sidekick. We knew nothing about him. He wasn't a character. There was no foreshadowing of him or his demise until it happened. And again, with the draft, that was not an issue. That was not something people talked about. It wasn't like, oh, the system makes shitty people. It was just there is one shitty person that makes heroes bad, or like all heroes are going to be bad. And then at the very end, when it becomes an issue, they're like, oh no, the draft is the reason, like all of these heroes they do the training and they're awful and whatnot. And there's just like no foreshadowing. It feels very amateur to just kind of introduce the character, give us a little bit of backfill, and then have them be important in the story then and not before then. At least Leviathan gets a little bit of a pass because he's supposed to be mysterious, but it really does feel like there's no information about him given, and then we're given a whole lot of backfill, his horrifying backstory in regards to why Super Collider is irredeemable, and that's it. All right, that's all I have to say about that. Also, I don't know where to put this, but something that really bothered me, quantum entanglement at the very end when she's no longer a hero and she's like teaming up with Anna, she is like, I think I need a name change. I think I need to change my hero name. And she gives them like a new name. But the entire time afterwards, they only refer to her as Quantum. Like they don't give her the name change. She's like, I think I'm going to change my name. I've always liked this name. You should call me this name. And Anna's like, no, I'm just going to call you Quantum. She doesn't say that she won't. She encourages Quantum to change her name. But in the narrative, she is only called Quantum from there on. And that just bothered me. I was like, why aren't you? She said she wanted to change her name. Give her the name change. Like, call her that. I'm not stupid. I would know who that is. Come on. Alrighty, so in conclusion, the writing style was good. The dialogue was really fun. It was a really interesting dialogue. I liked reading it. I didn't hate the book. I just feel more strongly about this because I feel like it could have been something really, really good, and it just didn't quite get there. So there's like a grain of something, like we can work with this, but it just needed a little more thought, a little more introspection, and then we could have gotten something like amazing, and we just didn't, just not yet, but we're getting there. And I do think that this is the start of a great writing career. I don't think I'm gonna hunt out her next book. If she writes another book, I don't think I'm gonna like look for it, but if I happen to come across it and it looks interesting enough, I will definitely read it. It's not like I'm not gonna read her next book. I don't regret spending $1.25 on it. It was interesting that I had seen it on TikTok and then found it in the store. It just kind of felt like it was meant for me to read, but I don't think I would want to pay more. You know, like this is a almost $30 book because it's, you know, a hardback, whatnot. I don't think I would want to pay that much. Alrighty, if you like this video, please give it a like and subscribe for more videos like this. If you've read this book, what are your thoughts on it? And if you have any suggestions for some books that might have this hero versus villain question debate that you recommend, please put them in the comments down below. Please do not comment Invincible or The Boys. Those are so gruesome. I can't watch gore. I can't. I can read it, but I cannot watch it. So if it's anything other than The Boys and Invincible. Okay. All right, bye. I don't know why, but when I was reading this, I could not imagine Doc Proton as anything other than Gran Torino from My Hero Academia.